All right, good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another Short War Summary. And today we're receiving almost unbelievable news that apparently Prigozhin has been killed in a jet crash right outside of Moscow in the Tver region, and he is allegedly dead. However, we're not quite sure about that just yet. We do have some evidence which might suggest he maybe is still alive, but the official report right now is he has perished in that plane crash, along with a ton of other Wagner associates as well, which is obviously, it's an understatement to say, is big news. So let's go ahead and jump right into our first news article of the day, which is from us, at It's the Enforcer on Twitter. It says, Yevgeny Prigozhin has allegedly been assassinated by Russia, and reports indicate he was killed after Russian air defenses shot down his private jet, and several other high-profile Wagner affiliates were also allegedly on board. And right here in this photo, you can see a photo of the actual wreckage on the ground itself, and it's obviously in tatters and on fire, and nobody's going to survive that situation because it's quite severe for a plane crash. So that was a pretty effective shot on the part of the Russian air defense, to say the least. And moving into our second post here, we have one from Visegrad24, and we get some more context as to what happened right before the plane crashed onto the ground. And we see here that witnesses say they heard two bangs before Prigozhin's plane crashed, and in this video, which we'll watch in just a second, it's possible to see the vapor trail of the missile which shot down Prigozhin's plane, and in the opinion of Visegrad24, it's clear as day that Putin killed Prigozhin. So let's go ahead and take a look at this video here and see what we can determine from it. And there's that vapor trail in the top left right there we can see in the corner. And obviously there is the plane itself falling out of the sky like a rock. And obviously planes don't fall out of the sky quite like that on a daily basis. And it's logical to assume that since Russian air defense is active in the area, that is probably the reason it is falling out of the sky. Totally logical to conclude. And since a lot of Putin enemies were on board, that's probably likely. So let's go ahead and fast forward here and see the actual smoke plume on the ground. And we can see it right here. And we got that picture just a moment ago that I showed on screen from actually on the ground where the explosion happened of an eyewitness nearby. So that is the actual spot in context of the entire area where it happened, right out in the Tver region. So with that piece of news out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to our next post here, which is from the Kyiv Post. And we have that video of the wreckage itself on the ground to give you some more detail as to what happened when it crashed. As you can see, the fire is pretty large. The wreckage is actually pretty large itself. And if you're curious, this was allegedly an Embraer private jet, which is rather large. And Prigozhin was living large, by the way. He was decently wealthy, even though he's quite was an evil individual. And he was living quite large and flying on this rather large private jet. So that is the wreckage on the ground of that. So let's go ahead and jump right into our next piece of news here, which is actually a map. It's the location of the crash itself in relation to Moscow to give you some context as to exactly where this happened. And as you can see here from the map, it is in the northwest region near Moscow. And we don't know the exact location in the Tver region where it happened, but it is in the spot, and that gives you an idea of exactly where it happened. So over here is Belarus, there's the Tver region, and here is Moscow. So it's very possible that Prigozhin was either going to or from Belarus back to Moscow, and somehow his plane was flying through that region, maybe at the edge of it here, and that could be where it got shot down, but we do know the general location, and that's just to give you some context as to exactly where it was. So moving on to our next post here, we have one from Phytex News, and you can probably recognize this devil right off the bat. It says here that personal acquaintances confirm the death of senior Wagner official Dmitry Utkin, says the Russian channel MIG of Russia. And obviously this fellow right here was a very nasty individual, a wannabe Nazi, and apparently his personal acquaintances have confirmed that he is dead, unlike Prigozhin, which we really don't have the same kind of confirmation about just yet, but this guy was apparently on board that jet, and he got caught up in the blaze. So he is a goner, and that is one less Russian war criminal right there that everyone has to worry about. And moving on to our next post here, we have one from Visegrad24 yet again, and we have a statement from Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency, and they have announced that Prigozhin has officially died in the plane crash in that Tver region, which I mentioned a moment ago. But take that with a grain of salt. Remember, this is still the Russians making the statement, and the Russians are known for lying. They're known for making things up when they are basically convenient to them, and that could be the instance right now. But we're not totally sure. I'm not ready to say whether or not he's officially dead. I know some people have officially reported that he is, but you're about to see in just a moment, I do have some evidence to prove that he may not be dead just yet. And moving on to our next post here, we have one from Phytex News, And it says Prigozhin's inner circle is not able to reach him, says a source, and that's from Fontanka. And obviously, with Prigozhin's inner circle not being able to reach him, that could lead some to conclude that he's dead, or it could lead some to conclude that he's simply on the run and he doesn't want to blow his location by getting on the phone and revealing where he is. That could be another possibility, but right now it's all speculation, and we'll have to wait and see. And also another piece of context which we must point out, which we have here, the headline says, jet crash in Russia kills 10, officials say, and this part right here, which is the most important part, is the Wagner chief was on the passenger list. And that is what led most people to believe that he was killed in the crash, because he was on the actual passenger list himself. But that is not conclusive proof that he's actually dead, and we're going to have to wait and see. And real quick, I also want to show you how I learned of this news article so quickly today. I actually got notified on my phone about this huge story using Ground News, which is the application you see me using right here. And I want to tell you that Ground News combines stories and articles from thousands of outlets, local and national, in one place so readers can get all sides of the story about what's being reported around the world. And by the way, this is actually one of the articles right here which I'm using to report the news right now. And as you can see, they provide a ton of visual breakdowns over here on the right. And you can see that they provide a visual breakdown of the bias distribution. So they'll tell you which way the source leans, which is either left, center, or right, which is very helpful in determining whether or not the source has a political bias. And also, they do give you some information about their ownership, so you know who is putting out the news, which is very important to source through the bias as well as some factuality information right here, which tells you how factual these sources typically are, which are reporting this news, which I'm looking at right here, right now. They also give you the ability to organize news by category. So for example, if you go to the search bar up here at the top and you type in Ukraine, you'll see right here they curate certain news articles in different categories right here. We're going to click on the Ukraine section, and that's going to bring us to it in just a moment here. And here is the section specifically curated about news about Ukraine, which is extremely helpful. Here you can see the top Ukraine news right here, along with a little bar indicating the bias of the source, which is the huge, big help of Ground News in my opinion. And also another feature they have is called the blind spot feed, and you can see that right here. Here is one story in the blind spot, and what that means is this section presents articles which may have been over or underreported, and the risk of over or underreporting an article is sometimes that creates information bias due to the nature of the source's political leaning. And this feature right here, the blind spot feed, which I find super useful, ensures you get a balanced view of the news. I believe Ground News allows you to become a smarter news consumer by being able to see through the bias, and I think it allows you to make informed decisions about the world around you. And I personally use it all the time, like I said, and I think you'll find it useful as well. And to make sure you never miss an update, go to ground.news/enforcer and subscribe through my link so they know I sent you, and that way you can get unlimited access for just $5 a month. And once again, huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring the video and also being a partner of the Enforcer channel. We are very grateful for that, and once again, big thanks to them. And moving on here to our next news article of the day, we have another from Visegrad24. And this article might throw you for a bit of a loop because we have some evidence here that suggests that maybe Prigozhin isn't dead. We learned that a second plane owned by Prigozhin just landed at the Ostafayo airport near Moscow, and Wagner supporters are hoping that Prigozhin cheated death by boarding that plane instead. So let's go ahead and take a look here. We can see the plane landing at the Moscow airport. That is allegedly the second jet owned by Prigozhin. And that is quite interesting that at the exact same time the other plane got shot down, another one was also flying in as well, which was owned by Prigozhin, which is suspicious to me and makes me wonder if maybe they knew something was about to happen and they put him on the second plane. But that's still speculation. We'll have to wait and see. But moving on to our next article here, we have another piece of the puzzle which may throw you for another loop. Here we learned that only 8 bodies have been found at the Wagner jet crash site. And since there was a second Wagner jet in the air that turned back to Moscow after the other plane exploded, establishing with certainty who was on the plane is going to be problematic. And that certainly is going to be problematic, and with only 8 bodies being found thus far, there was allegedly 10 people on board, so there's 2 people unaccounted for. And right off the bat, that rings alarm bells in my head, because if there's a second jet and Prigozhin's the main guy in charge of Wagner, they're going to look out for his security, presumably, and maybe they put him on that second jet to avoid getting killed on the first one, that maybe the Russians had some intel might get shot down. So, with that bombshell out of the way, let's go ahead and move into our next article here. we're already learning about the backlash from this alleged killing of Prigozhin. Whether or not he's dead or not is insignificant in relation to what the Wagner are going to do in revenge for it. And we see here that Telegram channels associated with Wagner appealed to the Russian government of the Russian Federation, and the mercenaries said that if the death of the head of the PMC Wagner Prigozhin was confirmed, they would organize a second march of justice to Moscow. So right now, we're seeing potentially the start of a regime change because the Wagner is preparing to maybe put a second march on Moscow, which obviously we know the first one was very effective. This one could be even worse because when somebody becomes a martyr, that is very motivating to people like Wagner to go in and try to topple the government of Russia. So this could be a historic moment in basically toppling the regime of Russia. So moving on to our next news article here, we have one from Anton Gerashenko, and we received some more news about the revenge that Wagner is plotting. And it says here, there are rumors about the death of the head of the Wagner PMC, and the most significant part of this is the Wagner have made a new threat. They said to the Russian government that Prigozhin better be alive, it's in your own interest. Once again, another direct threat toward Putin's regime, and Wagner is not playing around, I don't think. I think they're serious about this, and we could be seeing something big happen in the next day or two that could change things in this war dramatically, in my opinion. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our next news article here. We have one from OSINT Defender. It says, Wagner sources have confirmed the deaths of both founders of the PMC group Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and also Dmitry Utkin, as a result of the plane crash in the Tver region today. And obviously with Wagner saying that, that adds some more credence to the story that maybe that indeed Prigozhin is dead. From all intents and purposes, it appears that Utkin is definitely dead. But Prigozhin, on the other hand, he might have been on that flight or might not have been. I'm still going to leave it up to y'all. Even though Wagner says that he's dead, I still have some skepticism about that because the facts point to there might be more to the story than meets the eye. But with that piece of news out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to our next one. And we have a post from Clash Report. And we see on Wagner's Telegram channels that if Prigozhin's death is confirmed, the Kremlin will be taken. A very definite statement, another threat from Wagner. And once again, I think the Putin regime has kicked the beehive, and they could be in some deep trouble when it comes to Wagner. Once again, the Wagner are right across the border in Belarus, and it's not too unplausible to think that they could go right back across the border into Russia and repeat what they did last time, but this time with some more success behind it because they're fueled by basically a martyr situation. So we have one last piece of news I want to show you, and it really isn't news. It's more of a foreboding statement that Putin made a while back, saying that the only thing he can't forgive is betrayal. This reporter right here asked him about that a while back. Are you able to forgive? Putin said yes, but not to everything. And what is impossible to forgive? And Putin said very quickly, betrayal. And to me, I already knew from the get-go that Prigozhin was pretty much a dead man walking. It was simply a matter of time until he got taken out by the Putin regime. And it appears here, whether or not he's dead actually yet or not, he is a dead man walking. That is confirmed as of today. And he is going to get killed eventually if he's not already dead in that plane crash. Putin was not going to let him walk free. That peace deal that he made with Prigozhin was simply to buy time to figure out what to do with him. And apparently the Russians have made their mind up, and he's a goner. So with that last piece of news out of the way, that is all of the news we have thus far. But obviously the story is evolving rapidly, in fact, faster than I can keep up with it. And we're going to keep a sharp eye on the news. And if we get any more news, we'll cover tonight on our war stream at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we'll have all the breaking news on there as well, along with all your questions being answered that we can answer to the best of our extent. And also, please support us on Patreon as well. The link is in the description down below. Over there, you can support our work and help us keep putting out videos just like this one. And also, peep our Twitter page as well. It's @It'sTheEnforcer is the handle. And you can follow the news minute by minute as it happens. And we do appreciate all your support across all of our platforms. And once again, I hope you found the video informative. And that is all for now. So we'll see you later on. And bye-bye for now.